It's not crap. I bet you anything you like. In years to come, someone's going to go, who's this? You will be keeping it in your half a straw. You see, I'm going away.
I'm not going to do bloody fanfares and music and documentary shit and stuff like that today. I really just honestly, I want to read you something. If I can. It goes like this. My recollections of that day are somewhat obscure and a bit off, really, to be honest with you. What I can tell you is that it occurred somewhat like this. It's what consciousness rose slowly on 2nd of January 1995 as I reached a vague state of awareness 22 years ago. The flood of the breaking dawn seemed to burst through the windows of the spare room as I groaned into the pillow, despairing of the forthcoming reprisal that were inevitably going to be a large part of my day. My hope was that Liz was going to be swift in the execution of the forthcoming argument. Hiding my despair under the pillow, I managed to find strength whilst I considered the hour. I lifted myself on the bed, wading through ample debris of clothes on the floor towards where my dressing gown was. I hauled the threadbare article over my shoulders and managed to glance at my watch. It was 10:45. Staggering in amusement and making my way downstairs, I wondered at the foolishness of staying up so late to watch comedy on Channel 4. Reasoning Liz would want breakfast, I padded down the absurdly steep Edwardian staircase that led to the kitchen. Although the Devon seagulls had already started to squawk that morning, the song did not seem to be as beautiful as it normally was, just loud and a basing noise that accompanied the blurriness of the morning. Samuel started to bound towards me in the hope of being fed. I still found it difficult to rejoice at another day of uncertainty as to Liz's condition. It was when my bare feet hit the cold, laminate floor that I was woken to the reality of the situation that I had hitherto ignored that morning. How would we proceed into the future? I knew a child. And legalised marriage was on the table. A civil marriage was not going to be the way forward for either of us. We had both agreed on that. What was the place we left our discussion? How much longer would we go on living in this isolated environment? It seemed odd that I was posing these questions to myself without footwear. I put some slippers on. In the end, the dripping tap in the sink prompted me to leave these questions until later. Making Liz some tea and toast, I stood at the sideboard wearing my maroon shorts and absurd green slippers whilst humming to the tune of Prison Cell Block 8 she loved to watch on a continual basis. Then I realised something. This cold floor suddenly struck me without warning, alerting my senses to the unexpected shock. It almost alerted me, alarming even, feeling a sudden chill down my spine. It was normally at this time of day that Liz would kick me out of bed to make her breakfast. Why wasn't this happening? Why was she not shouting me from our room? Dashing for the stairs, in my paranoid flight, I left the toast to burn and crumble in the machine. I found the stairs to the bedroom and I walked back up them. They seemed longer that day. The tasteless 50s pattern on the carpet, more prominent. Sam panted after me unnecessarily and made me unnecessarily trip in my flight. I wasn't sure where to find when I got to a room, even how to handle what it was. Assuming my paranoia was ill-founded, when the door creaked open, I entered with mounting trepidation. The bedroom seemed exactly as I'd left it at 12:55 the previous night. The same magnolia slapped walls as usual. I was expecting to see I don't know what I was expecting to see. I thought we'd been through so much that the argument of last night was nothing more than a hiccup to us in the long run. Instead, I found my beautiful girl exactly as I left her, asleep on her stomach with her left cheek on the pillow. Again, I crept carefully towards the bed as she tried to wake her, attempting this delicately at first, and then with a larger shake. It struck me that perhaps the waft of lemon fragrance might wake her. Honey and lemon was always her favourite drink of choice. Dashing to retrieve the cup I had already made during my preparations for breakfast, I almost fell over Sam a second time and heard him yelp. When I returned, I tried in vain to test my theory by waving a cup under her little nose. Unfortunately, her nose was obscured by the pillow, so this proved to be of little use. I shook her again. Eventually, the time came when I had to try to get the duvet from under her. I had tried to relieve her of the bed covers the previous night, so I could get some sleep on my own bed. The attempt proved little use, and so I had given up and slept in the spare room. On Tuesday, the 11th of January, 1995, I found that the bedclothes still would not give under her weight. "Liz!" I called, shouting as I bounced on the bed, attempting to wake her. "Liz, come on, sweetheart. I've got you some lemon tea." My efforts were in vain, and my calls reached deaf ears. It occurred to my dull senses of the morning that Liz sometimes liked to have her feet tickled, though on this occasion Sam had beaten me to it and was scratching the end of the duvet as I pondered. But even the attentions of the animal got no response. Having alerted me more keenly, Samuel wailed unexpectedly by the door, and I made one final attempt to wake her, lifting her with my delicate and loving care. It seemed to me that I could not recall her being so heavy just recently. Indeed, things were changing for her in that respect, so it seemed strange to me. I lifted her so that her shoulders were level with my chest, and as I looked upon her face and neck, I could see why I had so much trouble. It's hard to describe the moment like that. Liz with a light shade of purple, her lips dull and grey, her wonderful golden red hair had turned a shade of 70s dull vignette. The poise and composure of her face that was so regularly toned was drooping and lifeless. Harsh, darkened areas of facial features were globulized and darkened with shades of congealed blood. This to the point which blackness endured in my mind. I'll never forget that one particular sight that permeated my soul. Her life had snapped like a twig in a hurricane. The preciousness of existence displayed for me to understand the curse in an instant. I think the shock and perplexity on Samuel's little face said it all. He sat there, lost, not knowing where to run or what to do. The poor little puppy watched as one of his best friends crouched, screaming on the double bed. The other best friend simply falling into the arms of the first. All the poor little Jack Russell could do was to bark in despair, run and shout about the room. Even as I stopped wailing and laid Liz gently to rest, Sammy was still running around my feet whilst I ran towards the stairs. Just to make life really difficult, he jumped over the room, and I spent a minute or so like in a stress state trying to get him out. Eventually closing the door behind me, I dashed down the stairs and jumped the last 4. Then I spent an infuriating minute on the floor whilst an epileptic fits subsided. I nearly had a fit at that point. There was no more time to lose. All I could think of was saving the situation. I didn't even want to consider the evident truth that I was sort of like alone now. After having called 999, I think the next half an hour was the longest of my life. I made a cup of tea, fed Samuel, even got breakfast from my room and washed it up. I did anything that would distract me from the truth. the feeling of emptiness, of stark reality, the binding truth that calls forth our lives, can be summed up in moments like that. It was the first time I truly felt as though everything I had done was for nothing. No one was there anymore. Nothing could bring me round. The realization that the strictures we create for ourselves and our lives are just a framework is humbling. No icons, no heroes to make the situation bearable. No doctor. The room which I spent my time was empty of all. I had been hollowed out and laid to waste. Nothing remained. I had spun the wheel and it had flown off the table completely. Sam could see my pain. He had finally calmed down and simply sat by the left side of the sofa, quietly as if to expound his sorrow. We both waited for the officials to arrive. When they did, I hugged Margaret, Liz's wife, deeply. The officials came back eventually with a response that she had died at 12 o'clock on the 11th of the 1st, 1996, on Tuesday evening, of massive epileptic seizure. She suffocated, and I abandoned her. I abandoned her the previous night. But it was actually the situation in which I had found her that really killed her. It was the way in which she'd been looked after. It was the NHS, it was the care industry. It was the way in which her situation couldn't be stabilised. The epilepsy couldn't be stabilised. It was all just so difficult. And I, as an epileptic myself, took over and tried to fix it. I used to try and fix everything, all the time. But this is something I couldn't fix. I wonder why. The 10th of January will always be a date I'll mull through.
I really just want to talk a lot of gibberish so I can do my own lovely tones. What do you call it? Silvery tones. Do I sound normal?